Hello and welcome to the Niagara Falls Public Library. Explore the possibilities. And today we're talking again about National Poetry Month and some poetry books at the library with Librarian Cecilia. Anthologies expand horizons. They bring together groups of poems from different artists, different poets, and they show the scope and the power of poetry. Roger Housden has put together several anthologies. They also include 10 poems to open your heart, 110 poems of love and revelation, and he lives in Woodstock, New York. So in this one, 10 Poems to Change Your Life, he says, "This is a dangerous book. Great poetry calls into question not less than everything. It dares us to break free from the safe strategies of the cautious mind. It opens us to pain and joy and delight. It amazes, startles, pierces, and transforms us." So he has selected poems by 10 different authors, and then he reflects on them and talks about how they've affected him and others, and gives a angle on which to reflect. He starts with The Journey by Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver is one of the poets that was featured in the previous Poetry Month video audio. And so The Journey by Mary Oliver. "One day you finally knew what you had to do, and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug at your ankles. 'Mend my life,' each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do," and it carries on from there. And then Housden reflects on that. So all of his books are highly recommended. Together in a Sudden Strangeness, America's Poets Respond to the Pandemic is an anthology brought about by the pandemic and poets reflecting on that. Here's one by Cornelius Eady called Corona Diary. "These days you want the poem to be a mask, soft veil between what floats invisible but known in the air. You've just read that there's a singer you love who might be breathing their last, and wish the poem could travel, unintrusive as poems do, from the page to the brain, a fan's medicine. Those of us who are lucky enough to stay indoors with a salary count the days by press conference. For others, there is always the dog and the park and the dog. A relative calls, 'How you doing? Are you a ghost?' The buds emerge on time for their brief duty. The poem longs to be a filter, but in floats spring's insistence. We wait." Jane Hirschfield writes, "Today, when I could do nothing, I saved an ant. It must have come in with the morning paper, still being delivered to those who shelter in place. A morning paper is still an essential service." And it carries on from there, reflecting about the little kindnesses that we're able to do. Together in a Sudden Strangeness, edited by Alice Quinn. The Golden Shovel Anthology, New Poems Honoring Gwendolyn Brooks, edited by Peter Kahn, Ravi Shankar, and Patricia Smith, with a foreword by Terence Hayes. Really shows the inventiveness of poets and the way that poets honor each other and work from each other's work. The Golden Shovel Anthology celebrates the life and work of poet and civil rights icon Gwendolyn Brooks through a dynamic new poetic form, the Golden Shovel, created by National Book Award winner Terence Hayes. The last words of each line in a Golden Shovel poem are, in order, words from a line or lines taken from a Brooks poem. So somebody selects a line from a Brooks poem and then uses each word in order for the ending word of the lines of their poem. Super inventive, and you could try that with any poet, any poem. Just pick a line that you like and use those words. So the poems are in a way secretly encoded to enable both a horizontal reading of the new poem and vertical reading down the right-hand margin of Brooks's original. So many famous poets have contributed to this anthology. I want to read just this one by Patience Agbabi, and she's a fellow in creative writing at Oxford Brookes University. She took the line, "He swallows sunshine with a secret yelp," and this is her poem called Her Secret. Makeup's a mask. She wants to be a he, to shin up trees, steal speckled eggs from swallows, stripped to the waist in undiluted sunshine. The kind of boy you'd arm wrestle with just to get close. A bare-knuckled, "What's a nice girl like you doing with?" Her secret locked in a grip so firm it makes them yelp. The Golden Shovel Anthology. When the light of the world was subdued, our songs came through, a Norton anthology of Native Nations poetry, edited by Joy Harjo, who has been the American national poet, with other contributing editors. Arthur Z., who won the National Book Award for his book Sightlines, says, "This anthology is revelatory and stunning, with judicious historical context, source poems in indigenous languages, and outstanding selections of contemporary poems. It shows the remarkable strength and diversity of Native poetry, which vitalizes all of American poetry. It is essential reading." This is the end stanza of a poem by Peter Bluecloud, who's a Mohawk poet from Canada. And he has worked as a steel worker, logger, iron worker, archaeological field worker, and ranch hand. So he ends this poem with, "Each day a different story is told me by the fence, the rain and wind and snow, the sun and moon shadows, this wonderful earth, this creation. I tell my grandchildren many of these stories. Perhaps this too is one of them." This one is by Mary Tallmountain, who she was a poet, stenographer, and educator born in Alaska, and she lived in Oregon. This is her poem, "There is no word for goodbye." "Sequoia," I said, looking through the net of wrinkles into wise black pools of her eyes. "What do you say in Athabascan when you leave each other? What is the word for goodbye?" A shade of feeling rippled the wind-tanned skin. "Ha, nothing," she said, watching the river flash. She looked at me close. "We just say tula. That means see you. We never leave each other. When does your mouth say goodbye to your heart?" She touched me, light as a bluebell. "You forget when you leave us. You're so small then. We don't use that word. We always think you're coming back. But if you don't, we'll see you someplace else. You understand. There is no word for goodbye." And my apologies for pronunciation, for any words that are from another language. When the light of the world was subdued, our songs came through. The last anthology recommended today is Poetry Speaks, and this is a huge book. Physically, it's a big book, heavy book, and it includes 3 audio CDs. So in this one, you can hear great poets read their work from Tennyson to Plath. goes through the history of American poetry, and it has archival recordings of these poets. And so it's great to hear the poems read in the poet's own voice on the CDs. You can also find recordings of poets online, of course. This one is from Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. Many people know this one or had to memorize it in school. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, and just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Another poet in this book, E.E. Cummings, who we also shared from in the earlier Poetry Month movie screencast. Love is a place, and through this place of love move with brightness of peace all places. Yes is a world, and in this world of yes live skillfully curled all worlds. Just a couple of the outstanding poets in Poetry Speaks. So that's today's sample of anthologies at the main library. You can call and request any of them from Maine or from LaSalle, or picked up in any other library in the Neoga system. So thanks again for being with us and celebrating Poetry Month. Have a great day.